Look at that. Pink bud.
I'm so stoked on it. I'm just really glad we've been able to find her and recover her.
I appreciate you guys having me here today. Several years ago, over here in State Land, there's a guy hunting, first day of deer season, and he went up in the hill there, and this little, it's a nice buck. He come running down out, and he pulled up and he shot it, and he had his buck, and he was field dressing out there, and he got all of it out, and I don't know what I can say. What can I say up here? Am I going to get thrown out? Anyways, he got it all gutted out, and here's something behind him. He looked around, and there's a flock of turkeys coming. Well, turkey season isn't even open. He pulls up and he shoots turkey. He said, he ran up there and grabbed that turkey, and he got up there, and there's 2 turkeys. He got 2 in one shot. He got back down to his deer, and he stuffed them up inside the deer. So when he dragged it down to the truck, he gets out there and he looks, and there's nobody coming, just his truck. He drags the deer down behind his truck, and he throws the stuff in the front of his truck, and he hears something. He turns around, here's a game warden, pulls in right behind him. He's saying, holy cow. So he gets out, and he's trying to, act a little nonchalant, Game warden looked at his deer and said, you got a nice buck. Oh, yeah, I got a good deer, He said, well, congratulations, He says, oh, you want me to help you load it? No, you don't have to. He said, oh, the warden said, no, I'll help you hold it. I'll help you load it up. And he grabbed it, and he threw it up in. One of them turkeys fell out of it. And the game warden looks at him. He looks back up in there, and he sees a wing feather, and he reaches up there and pulls another turkey out. He says, holy cow. He says, what do you have to say for yourself? And the guy says, it's a good thing I shot it, or it would have ate the whole flock. Anyways, when did you realize it wasn't a true story? When the game warden offered to help, right? They don't do that. They make you load it yourself. But years ago when I was a young boy, I'm going the wrong direction here. Years ago when I was a young boy, I loved to read of safaris and African stuff. And Peter Hathaway Capstick was one of the authors that he hunted over in Africa, and he was a little bit of an arrogant guy, because I can remember him, doing interviews, and he's just sitting back, and he's always had a whiskey in his hand, and he always was sucking on a cigarette. And he said, he says, if you're hunting lions and you're right-handed and the lion charges you, offer him your left hand, because you can live without that left hand. I'm thinking, dude, if this guy's going to give a lion his arm? And but when I was a kid, it just did something to me. I wanted to do adventure like that. It's an interesting story how he died. Heart disease, 56 years old, had heart because of the alcohol and the cigarettes. Heart surgery. After he came out of his surgery, never regained consciousness, and he died, 56 years old. Theodore Roosevelt, that picture right there of President Theodore Roosevelt. Does anybody know what president he was? What number? Not 45. What number? 26, I think. Something like that. But Theodore Roosevelt, right there, he was responsible, when he was the president, for conservation land. He saved aside for conservation, state land, federal land, 230 million acres in the state parks, in the national forest. And he was a real conservationist. Do you realize that Teddy Roosevelt is the only president, past and certainly present, that has a record book in the Boone and Crockett record books. And it was for a mountain lion. He killed a mountain lion. And the thing of it, read a story sometime. He killed it with a knife. He didn't even shoot it. He killed it with a knife. But that's a neat story. And one of the other authors I really enjoyed when I was younger, and I don't read a lot. If there's a movie out there now, I watch it. But I don't read a whole bunch. But I read back in then as Ernest Hemingway. Everybody knew who Ernest Hemingway was. There's no question you know who Ernest Hemingway was. A prolific author. I mean, he had a way. He's a funny guy because he never used big, long sentences. It was always real short stuff. And one of the books that he did write was that one right there, the cover's up there, The Old Man in the Sea. It's about a Cuban fisherman that set sail and he hooked a marlin and is a giant marlin. And he fought that and fought that and fought that. And instead of giving up, he persevered. He caught that and he finally got it in, but it towed him way out in the ocean and he tied it to his boat and he headed back for land. But in the meantime, sharks came up and literally ate all the meat off that fish. So when he pulled in, instead of having this great trophy, he had a rack of bones that he hauled in, the fish that ate it all. And probably one of the best well-known bow hunters in the world, I would say, would be Fred Bear. Fred Bear was an awesome guy. Everybody knows Fred Bear for being a bow hunter. Do you realize Fred Bear never hunted with a bow until he was 28 years old? We're talking Mr. Fred Bear, the pioneer of modern archery, 28 years old. You can see this has got a pointer. See that bear right there? Fred Bear Museum. I've been to the Fred Bear Museum twice. The Fred Bear Museum is no more. Okay, it is no more. Bass Pro bought it and they shipped this stuff all over the place, but he collected interesting artifacts. My wife and kids went through it one time with me when they were little, and you walk along and you can look right down on the factory floor and there are thousands of bows that people in the factory are building. It was pretty cool. And the other thing that I loved to do when I was a kid is hunting magazines. I loved reading hunting magazines, because this was everything you're looking at here was adventure. And a little kid from a trailer park in Tioga County, Pennsylvania, which is, if you don't know, it's a mile that way, maybe 2, I guess, if you go down the road just right. But I never had an opportunity for adventure. I couldn't picture myself having an opportunity for adventure. My grandfather, Pennsylvania Game News, he never threw one away. So he had 50 years of game news at his house, and man, Grandpa, we go to Grandpa's and we haul them all out. But what I want to talk to you today a little bit about, and I know I've been talking to a lot of you guys and gals, 5 things that matter when opportunity knocks. So many of us just need an opportunity. We need an opportunity to do something. It may be a grand hunt. It may be going out west and shooting a big elk or something. But it may not be. It may be right here in your back door. But there's things that matter when it comes time to go on a hunt, if you have that opportunity. Hands down, I'm not kidding you, hands down, the number one thing that will hinder you from being able to do a hunt if it arises, or a fishing trip if it arises, is your financial situation. No money, no go. It costs money. It costs money. How do you get money? Some of you know. You need a job, and you need to keep your job, and you need to spend less money than you make. That's it. One thing we live in a small world today. When I was younger, the world was huge. Africa was forever away. We have everything available to us so quick because of these jets and all this stuff. We can go anywhere in the world, literally within 48 hours, even with some layovers. You can go anywhere in the world. That isn't how it used to be. So many people, I talk to people all the time. They're hunting every year out west someplace, and they're going down south, and they're going to Canada. And the biggest thing you got to be careful of. That's great. That is great to do that. But I will warn you, a friendly warning, do not take away from your family the finances from your family. I know people who have gone on hunts, and they've taken the money away from the family budget, the kids, whatever it may be, to go on a hunt. I'm telling you, It's not worth it. Don't take away from your family. Don't take away from previous engagements like a mortgage, car insurance, and certainly don't take away your tithe. You know, God will understand. I'm using this money to honor Him, so I'm going to go on a big hunt. So, but that is the number one thing. The number two thing, physical condition. I know for a fact that physical condition will hinder your ability to be successful. What good does it do you to have the money to go on this giant hunt, going up in the mountains looking for an elk, and you die of a heart attack because you're overweight? You're not in good shape. And it's not just weight. There's other things. There's smoking, which I'm not saying don't quit smoking, but quit smoking. Stuff like that. I mean, just get yourself healthy. That's really big. This right here, this had nothing to do with the outdoors, but I had to, 7 years ago, I couldn't have done that. There was a 250-pound weight limit to jump out of that airplane. And 7 years ago, I wouldn't have made it. I was well over 250. And now I've gained a lot of that back. My wife's smiling. I think I'm going on a diet next week. At least a whole 30 eating regimen, but that's crazy. That's crazy to think, you couldn't, there's a lot of things you can't do in life if you're not healthy. It's huge. And by the way, you don't jump out of an airplane. That's called tandem jumping. You're strapped to another guy and he pushes you out. That's all there is to it. Hey, our next thing we're going to look at is character. Excuse me. This characters of yourself and other people. And I got a real live story with this one, and it was several years ago. Me and a couple guys, I worked down at the factory down at Payne Post, and I had a couple guys down there. We decided we're going to go on a wild boar hunt in Florida. And I worked with these guys, great guys, seemed to be great guys. And we had it all planned, and my in-laws had a little place in North Florida we could crash at for a couple days if we needed to, and we did. As soon as we got there, these two married men, three married men, they wanted to go to a bar and pick up women. And I'm going to tell you, I won't go into any detail about this. It cost me a lot of money and a lot of headache and heartache. We did not do it. We didn't go. I made sure of it. That wasn't in my character. It was in their character. So we pulled into our outfitter down there, and we got into the hunting lodge. Well, it was a pop-up camper in this guy's back lawn, but all you needed is a place to sleep. It didn't matter. And I thought, okay, we're going to get up bright and early in the morning. We're going to go pig hunting. I've always wanted to do that. The opportunity came up, and we was doing it. And they did a bonfire. And I told you I can't talk right. I can't spell. But they stayed up drinking beer all night long. The guide, too. Everybody was intoxicated, and I'm up before daylight, and son of a gun, it was noon before I seen one person. And by the time we got around, we had to go down through West Palm Beach. Yeah, boar hunting in West Palm Beach, But anyways, we actually did that, and the guide come out of his double wide with this great big huge beer. I forget what they call them. What do they call them? Pony? I don't know. Great big beer. And we're going down through West Palm Beach, and he's got that between his legs, and he's driving his Suburban, and we're sitting at red lights, and he's drinking that great big beer. That was his life. His character was off for what I wanted to do. So we'd get on a swamp buggy, and finally after it started, you know what a swamp buggy is? It's like a big platform with tractor tires all the way around it. It had a great big 350 engine in it. It could get some things done. But we got to the bait sites, and it is bait, and there's another thing we'll talk about in a little while. But we got to the bait site to stand, and the pigs were already there, and they crashed off and were gone. And he dropped us all off, and then they're not stupid. We never seen a pig. But lo and behold, he knew we weren't happy, so there's some kids from Minnesota coming in, and he extended our hunt one day. He said, I got a place we can go. There's a lot of pigs. I think you guys can get them. And as we're getting there, he says, but listen, guys, do not shoot twice. if you shoot, only shoot once. Well, I'm hunting with a muzzleloader. It doesn't matter to me. And I didn't realize why, but he leased this land for hunting, bow hunting only. It was airport land. But he took us in there, and I tell you what, I sat there up against this palm tree, and I heard a pig grunting, and I'm like, holy cow, here it comes, black hog coming right up. And I'm like, yeah, baby. And I'm laying across my knee there, and I was waiting for a bigger one, but, hey, I never shot a pig, and I pulled that trigger, and I flattened that hog right out, and it laid right there squealing like a stuck pig. But I sat there up against that tree, that palm tree, and I sit there, and it's starting to get dark, and the guide comes back around. You can hear his buggy going through, picking everybody up. And I looked up it's kind of to the north of me, and I see this light go up, and I'm like, well, I don't know what that is. And it starts arching over, and I'm thinking, what on earth is that? And all of a sudden, poof, big flash, was gone. And I didn't know it at the time, but the space shuttle had taken off right at dusk, and that was the space shuttle that I was watching go up over there. So I had my biggest hog I've ever shot. I've got bigger ones now, but that was the biggest one I've ever shot. And we were going through the swamp on the way back, and I had my pig. Man, I was all happy. And an alligator went across in front of the buggy. Well, the guide stops that and says, anybody want to catch an alligator? You don't have to tell me twice. I handed my muzzleloader to him, actually. And I jumped in. I was up to my armpits, and I'm chasing this alligator, and they got lights flicking back and forth. And I finally got it cornered under a big cypress, and I come up out of the water with an alligator, and I climbed up on the boat. And the biggest, to this date, the biggest alligator I've ever caught. Yeah. How many alligators have you caught? So that story sounds a lot bigger. But that's 4 days of hunting. That's the only pig I seen. Yeah. Sometimes it's not about what you get, it's that you got it. But that filled that out. So I got that alligator, and the character of the people I was involved with, I really didn't do enough research to figure out what kind of people they were. And surprise, surprise, it wasn't long before them gentlemen were divorced. What do I mean by your character? That's a thing that you got to be careful of. Okay, let's say I have my Eskimo buddy calls me up and says, Tom, can you come up to the North Pole and I got an opportunity for you. We're going to go out and club baby seals. As much as I'd love to club some kittens, that's a joke. It's a joke. As much as I would like to do, I'm not going to club baby seals. That's not within my character. Some people, and I'm not bashing this at all, because I'm not going to tear a sportsman down anyway. If this is your thing, that's cool. I'm not myself willing to go to a hunting preserve. That's cool if you do. I'm not arguing about it. That's hunting. And a lot of people can have a great experience at a cool hunt if they go to a hunting preserve. So the next thing we want to look at is timing. This one here is going to cost you a bunch. You have to have all that other stuff in line, but timing is big. A few years ago, I hope Ed's watching this, because we're going to have this on YouTube. A guy named Ed come out from San Diego, California, and was visiting a friend of mine. I was there, and we got introduced, and we kind of hit it off. He's a sportsman. And he says, Tom, we go to Idaho every year fishing. He said, we're going this year, but my buddy had to bail out. So out of the four of us, there's only going to be three. If you can get to Idaho, everything's paid for. I said, that's cool. When is it? And he said, 30 days. Holy cow, timing wasn't right. And my wife says, bless her heart, she says, I think you ought to go. Dude, I would love to go up in Idaho and fish them trout and all that stuff. That would be cool. But timing is very much important when it comes to your opportunity. Do you have time to plan? Do you have time can you be away from home that long? That's a big thing. I know a lot of you guys got kids and families. You can't be away from home for very long. And let's just take this example. If you were going out west on a 7-day hunt, and I would suggest if you've never been on a hunt anywhere, do not do a 7-day hunt. That's like going on a 14-day cruise when you've never been on the water before. It's not fun at all. You run out of time quick. But a 7-day hunt out west, you're looking at 10 to 12 days. By the time you drive out, drive back, and what is it when you get back from vacation? Holy cow, you need to come home to get a break because you're tired. But timing is really important. And this next one right here, marksmanship. It does you no good to be out there and have that trophy of a lifetime standing there and you can't hit it. This elk right here, I'll touch on him a little bit, but that elk right there, I got laughed out of elk camp with that because it was a muzzleloader hunt in Washington State, and I show up with a little 50 caliber CVA I bought at Walmart. It was a good shooting gun. I could shoot it pretty good, but you had to have open sights. It had to have an exposed breech, the nipple or whatever, the cap. It had to be out in the weather. You couldn't have a closed one like these 209s now. But I got laughed right out of elk camp. They all had 54 calibers, 58s. You know, these guys are laughing at the guy from Pennsylvania. Well, guess what? I could shoot that thing. I've shot whitetails with that with open sights at 220 yards. And my son Levi, sitting over there when he was 12, he videoed me shooting a doe at 220 yards with open sights. That thing was deadly. And when I got him, he come out 109 yards. And I wheeled around, and he seen me, and he started to trot, and I shot him on the trot. Thought I missed him. I thought, man, I come 3,000 miles, and I missed the only chance I got. And I have a YouTube hunt for him. It's all laid out. It's entertaining a little bit because I get a little bit excited. I get big time excited. But marksmanship. If you're going to go on a fly fishing trip, make sure you can lay that fly wherever you want to do it. It has to hit. Precision is everything. It doesn't do you any good to shoot arrows like that. I know people who shoot like that. Most of them are sitting. No, I ain't going to say that. So marksmanship is keen. And you might ask yourself, how do you find opportunity? Some people are planners. It's easy to get on the internet. See, we didn't have the internet back in the day. You actually had a phone hooked to the wall and stuff. It's harder to do this. So these hunting magazines we talked about, in the back, they always said outfitters. Oh, man, you could go with Alberta, or you could do whatever. But how do you find opportunity? That's the big question. You got to be creative. You absolutely have to be creative. My wife and I were fortunate enough that we were in the Middle East. We went to Israel on a Bible land tour, and I understand a lot of people from this church just a couple years ago went there. But we got there. We're looking in this water. My wife and I always wear polarized glasses. And I can remember Gideon. How many men did he pick? 700 or 300? 300 men. Where that cave is, where Gideon picked them men. There's this river comes out, and my wife and I are standing there, and there is rainbow trout everywhere. Holy cow. People come up and say, what are you looking at? The trout. And they don't see them. I said, put these glasses on. Dude, they were everywhere. So, real quick, we were staying on the Sea of Galilee, and they had a little shop there. And I went in there, and there it was. There's a fish pole with a reel on it, 17 shekels. Dude, I whipped my shekels out, and I didn't really know what I was doing. And I bought that fish pole, and I fished the Sea of Galilee. And I didn't realize catfish are not kosher. So if you're around Jewish people, do not haul a catfish out anywhere because there's no scales on it, and that's the old Jewish law. Anyways, this fish pole was the worst, crappiest thing I've ever bought in my life. If you picture the cheapest fish pole you've ever seen in your life, and you cut the quality in half, that's what I bought. I opened it up, and the top eye fell off. But thank the Lord, I had a Reese cup in my pocket, and I was able to take that little brown crinkly paper off it, and I wrapped it around in it, and I stuck the eye in that, and that's what got me fishing. So be creative. You got to be creative. This last summer, again, I've been a very blessed man. My adult children and my wife and my in-laws went on a cruise, like a family cruise, an adult cruise, no grandchildren allowed. My daughter's sitting right there, and she brought one with her, but it was in her belly, so we couldn't leave him home. But it was cool. So what do? I get online, and I start searching Bermuda, or what was it, Bermuda? It was Bermuda, because I was looking for a triangle. I never did find it. But You don't need a fishing license in Bermuda. So I tell you what, man, I have this little portable fish pole. And it goes in a pack, and I took that in my luggage. And I've been on mission trips, and that's been in my luggage down to the Dominican Republic. I've been down there a couple times. Fished down there in the Caribbean. It's really cool because one side of the Dominican is considered the Caribbean, but the north side is the Atlantic. Everybody thinks they're in the Caribbean, but it's the Atlantic. But anyways, I went out and I had some twister tails. This is the ocean. Dude, there's fish. Everywhere you look, there's piles of fish. It's salt water. There's no fresh water in Bermuda. They get all the rain from the rooftops. And long story short, I know I'm rattling on here, but long story short, I went fishing down there, and I tell you what, it'd be 100 fish in this little spot of water, and I'd throw my line in there, twister tail. Surely this is the ocean. And I'll tell you what, the fish would just scatter. I caught one little fish. And when I say little, I didn't bring a picture of it. It was little. I don't know what happened. I don't know if the rubber on the worm just happened to stick to the side of him and I yanked him out quick or what. But I'm thinking, man, I gotta have some bait. So the next morning, we was docked there for 2 days, so I knew I had time. Next day, I'm at the breakfast buffet and I'm walking along and I'm like, hello, Jimmy Dean sausages. So I grabbed me a pocket full of Jimmy Dean sausages, and I found a pier. This is the fish. This is the only one that I actually could get out of the water. But if you look right there, there's a concrete pier. And I went, this is looking out of the boat out in there, and I went around there, and I tell you what, sausages, I don't know what it is. Them fish love them things. I'd hook that in there, and I'd throw that in there, and I'm telling you what, it would take off, and my drag would go, snap. I run out of sausages. But I did grab a piece of French toast, too. And I had a little piece of that. And I get these, these fish are big. Keep in mind, this is a little 5-foot snap-together fishing pole with 6-pound test line on it. Didn't think that one through. But I finally had a piece of French toast, and I threw it, and I caught this fish. And you can't tell by that, because I'm frowning right there. I was ecstatic that I caught a fish. So opportunity. You have to look for it sometimes. How do you find it? Sometimes it just falls in your lap. I'm going to be honest with you. This right here, I dreamed always of going out west. My brother-in-law is a pastor at a little Baptist church in Yelm, Washington. And he had a sheriff at the time was in his church. And his sheriff had a buddy that was a fireman who had pack animals, and he went up the mountains. And they invited me. Tom, why don't you come out, go muzzleloader hunting for elk? Dude, that's like a dream come true. So I told a little bit of the story. This is after I got the elk. The chubby guy right there, that's me. This is the sheriff, and that's the fireman. That guy's name was Jerry. He was an absolute hilarious guy. Them mules act up a lot. We used to have horses. We were never horse people, but we had horses. His favorite saying, Jerry right there, I'm going to beat you like an adulterous woman. I heard that 50 times, and every time I laughed, and I didn't realize his wife had run off on him. But so that's a little bit of that. The next thing is dumb luck. Sometimes dumb luck happens. You see this white deer right here. It used to be a little whiter. It's bleached out a little bit now. I don't understand that. But that deer popped up not too far from my house. And I got permission to hunt a little 50-piece acre of woods there. And I was fortunate enough to get that. And several years ago, see if I can get that there. You can see there's an article that was in Bowhunter magazine. I wrote that article. Dude, they paid me. I sent that bad boy in there. I thought, that's cool. And then they sent me a check. I thought, I'm gonna be a millionaire. I know it. I never got any more. But that pig right there, that was an escaped convict from a hunting preserve up my dad's property up in, I won't say the town, but up toward Tioga, Pennsylvania. And I run into the owner, one of the owners, his brothers that owned it, and I said, dude, we got a pig up there. And he said, just shoot it. So we set a blind up. My dad put some corn out, and I went up one night on a Sunday night. I know what you're thinking. No, church was canceled because it was snowing. So they canceled church, and I told my wife, I'm taking off. So that pig come in, and I shot that single, one-handed with a 270 with a flashlight in the other hand, like this, running. Boom! I got him. Couldn't believe I got him. But that's one thing that we really don't take advantage of, I think, is local travel. We are blessed to be right next door to 2 states with excellent fishing, excellent hunting. People leave their homes. I had my wife had an uncle that come up from Florida this year bow hunting. He left his home. I go to Florida to hunt hogs. He come up here, got a really nice 8-point buck in the doe, and had a great time. People come to our houses to do this stuff. This right here, this antlers right here, and dude, somebody's got a giant buck in there. Some 7.5-year-old deer. Looks like a couple sheds in there. That's incredible. But you can make an adventure right in your own backyard. This buck right here, this bottom set of antlers right here, they're matching set. If you go down my driveway, and you could have seen them from my driveway. I was out hunting them, but they're laid an antler. I bent over, picked up, and they're laid the other one. I thought, well, that's cool. I knew who it was. I got cameras all over the place. The next year, he got a little bit bigger. He gained some character. Had a worm hole in the end of his antler there, and I nicknamed him the Kicker Buck. And my wife says just last night, why do you call it Kicker Buck? Well, it's got a kicker. She says, well, that's really a Y. It's not really a kicker. I can't change the name now because I got a whole YouTube story on that buck right there. 3 years of antlers, and then I found him dead. And I had to do it legal because the Pennsylvania Game Commissioner I want to say this. You got to do it legal or they're going to take it away from you. But in Pennsylvania, you just can't pick it up. You have to buy it. So I called up the Game Commission, and what scares me is I'm a carpenter, and the game warden called me. He says, Tom, he says, hey, you found a buck dead. I said, yep. He says, all right, you're building that store in Lawrenceville, aren't you? I'm thinking, how much about me does this guy know? He said, I'll stop there tomorrow. And he said, we can fill the paperwork out. So he stopped there, and I lowered the tailgate down, and he's like, holy cow, what'd that score? What's it score? Holler, somebody.
156.
153 and some change. Nice buck for where I live. But local adventure. A lot of people don't think about. New York and Pennsylvania, that's a screen off my Onyx hunt. The elk right there, my little brother who's sitting right back here somewhere, he drew an elk tag, and we went down and hunted elk down in Binzet, Pennsylvania area. 31 bulls. Can you imagine a Western guy running into 31 bulls? That doesn't happen. That was pretty cool, though. So what I really want to talk about, this is my dad. My dad's right here. He turns 80 the day after tomorrow. But that picture right there is in 1972. He was younger. I don't know how young he was. I don't want to do the math. But he went on a big game hunting out in Idaho in 1972. 50 years later, he goes to Montana with some guys, and he caught a bunch of rainbows and brownies, and they missed their airplane. So they rented a car and drove back from Montana. Wait for the next plane, Dad. And then a couple years after that, he was able to go up to Newfoundland or one of them places up there, and he shot that bull moose. But adventure, building these stories, it takes a lifetime. It really does. I've talked to so many of you who just have some awesome stories. I mean, some of them I went, yeah, I don't know if I'd tell many people that, but it does take a lifetime. Opportunity is knocking for each one of us, somehow. It may not be obvious, but if it comes up, you get your ducks in a row. You get your finances in order. You find out who you're going with. You practice. It can be a pretty cool adventure, or it can be the worst thing in your life. But opportunities knock, and you got to answer the door. A lot of you might say, well, you're lucky I've never had the opportunity. So I want to share. This is going to be a little harder for me because I got so many family members here, and this story involves that in my testimony. And you might say you're lucky. Everybody says, who are you? If you ask me who I am, I'm a carpenter by trade. I am an ordained pastor because I really felt God called me to do exactly this. And I seem to do a lot of funerals, which I don't mind at all. And but I'm an outdoorsman by choice. It's because I want to be an outdoorsman. So back when I was about 9 or 10, my family had a a trailer in a trailer park down in the Lawrenceville area, and that's where my recollection of life begins. I don't have any idea what I'd done before that. It's just all of a sudden I popped up in this trailer park when I was 10 years old. But there's a little Baptist church up the road, and they had an old school bus painted white and blue, and every Sunday morning, man, that school bus would come down, and they'd drive through our trailer park, and the kids would jump on, and my parents were smart enough to know, we get them kids on that bus, 2.5 to 3 hours. They're going to be gone. We ain't got to deal with them. So we done that week after week. One time, my brother John, he is here. And I don't want to embarrass him too much, but we was roughhousing a little bit before we got on a church bus, and he fell down and put a nail right straight through his hand. It went in here and coming out the back of his hand. But he didn't have to go to church that day. He got to go to the hospital and get a tetanus shot. So, not that I was jealous. I was jealous. But anyways, I'm gonna go back off that one just for a little bit. The church bus would pick us up, and there's this old lady at church. She smelled like mothballs or cats. I don't know. I couldn't really decipher what it was. Maybe that's why I don't care for cats as much as I should. But her name was Mrs. Corwin. And I can remember one week in Sunday school, Mrs. Corwin, and she says to me, "You don't have to call me Mrs. Corwin. You can call me Aunt Doris." Okay, Aunt Doris. She was my aunt. My grandfather's brother had been married to her, so therefore it made her Aunt Doris. But everybody else was calling her Mrs. Corwin, so I figured I would too. But in that trailer park, about, 4 houses down, there was a trailer that had a wooden fence around it with little slats. And there was this old lady that lived there. And I'm 10, so I'm thinking she's 27, 28, maybe, years old. But all the boys in the trailer park, we go down there, and man, we look through them slats. She's laying there in a bikini, and we're going, oh, baby. I never seen anything. I was 10 years old. I didn't even know what I was looking for. I had no clue. But the older boys thought, well, it's a worthwhile endeavor. But, deep inside of me, I knew if I had to sneak to do it, it was probably wrong. I knew in my heart when I had to lie about something, where you been? You been down looking at the neighbor? No. That was lying. I knew that was wrong. I knew bad language was wrong. I knew stealing stuff was wrong. They called it raiding gardens back then, but you're stealing, adolescent fruit out of somebody's garden. And we used to do that, and we'd throw them at cars when they go by. And that's a different story. That's a different story. But one week, sorry there, buddy. One week I can remember my Aunt Doris was preaching or teaching. She was my Sunday school teacher. She's teaching how Jesus died on the cross for me, for my sins, and how if you just ask him to be your Savior, he's going to come into your life, and you're going to be a Christian. And I was pretty convicted. So I raised my hand. I said, Mrs. Aunt Doris Corwin, I would like to accept Jesus as my Savior, and I accepted Jesus as my Savior. And they baptized me, pasteurized me, all the other stuff they do to you. I got baptized, and I was a Christian, and everybody knows if you're a Christian, your life is clear sailing. Nothing ever happens bad again. Yeah. Well, by now, my parents had put wheels on the trailer, and they moved it into a hayfield next to my grandparents' house, and I lived in the country now. So we moved from down there in the park up on the hill, and I lived in the country, and I loved living in the country. I loved it. We got up there, and my dad built an addition on the house, on the back of the house, and we called it the back room. Kids, listen up. The reason we called it the back room, because it was a room, and it was on the back. So that's why we call it the back room. That back room's going to come into play a little bit later. So my dad built that, and my dad's here tonight, and it's hard for me to say. My dad wasn't a godly man. He really wasn't. He smoked, and he drank, and he ran around on my mother. I can remember the first time I heard him use the F-bomb. It was a hunting situation we was in. But I loved my dad. My dad was the hardest worker I knew. He never let us go hungry. We always had clothes on our back. I had a good life, even though my dad was a little rough at times. I used to hate them words. When your dad gets home, you're getting a spanking. My dad had a belt that was about that wide, and he was pretty muscular in his day. So my dad built that back room on there, and he threw a little wood stove in there, and things were good for me. They were really good for me. And my neighbor, we had a neighbor lady, she's an old airline stewardess, retired airline stewardess, and I used to work for her on Saturdays, 4 or 5 hours a day, 75 cents an hour. Dude, I was making the big money. I loved it. So I was 14 by the time this was going on, and I had some money in my pocket, $8, $9, and my older brother had this little .22 rifle that I wanted really bad. I took the bolt out of it for it wouldn't be a safety hazard. But this old rifle right here, he says, Tom, I'll sell you my gun. How much? How much you got? I got $8. All right, here it is. He needed cigarettes or beer money or something. I can't remember what he wanted. But you wouldn't believe it, but I shot a woodcock one day flying with that rifle. Took him right between the wings. God is my witness. I really did. No, it really did happen. But that gun right there, I believe that gun right there saved my life. I'm going to tell you why. I was living the dream until I was in 10th grade. It's toward the end of the school year in the 10th grade. And we had a great family. My dad was a construction worker. He was gone a lot. But I come home from 10th grade, and I walked in the door, and I opened the door, and every bit of the furniture in our house was gone, except for the kitchen table and my mom and dad's bed. I run into my bedroom, and my bed was gone. And my dresser was gone. But before my mom ran off with a guy, she took all my clothes out of my dresser and threw them in a pile. And I put them in bags. I put them in garbage bags. And I'm going to tell you what. She left a note on the table for my dad. I still to this day don't know what it is, but what it said. It wasn't for me to look at. But my world just crashed. And my dad found a mattress from somebody, gave us a mattress. So I didn't sleep on bags of clothes for very long. But I had a place to stay, and it was tough. It was tough. Everything I knew was my brothers and sister were gone. We had nothing. Nothing, just a table and one bed is what I walked into. And it was a tough time. And it wasn't long after that, my dad was at the Moose in Elkland, and he'd run into a woman there. I guess they hooked up, and he eventually married her. But this is during the summer. This is the summertime after my 10th grade year, between 10th and 11th grade. And by early winter, December, right after deer season, my dad moved in with her, and he was gone. And I came home from school, and there I was, a 17-year-old junior in high school. For the first time in my life, I was alone. I had nobody. I had no food. I had no income. Nothing. I don't know what happened. I don't know how I made it. I really don't. I don't. It wasn't long. It was just after Christmas. It was maybe this time of year. I come home from school one day because I kept in school because I got free lunch in school. Man, I was on the wrestling team. I was a co-captain of the wrestling team. They said, how can you eat your lunch and still make weight? Dude, that's all I got to eat, and that's what I ate. So I come home one day, and there sat my 14-year-old brother, face all bruised, bag of clothes. My mom's alcoholic boyfriend got drunk and beat him up. And they didn't know what to do with him, so they took him to my house and dropped him off with a bag of clothes, and there we sat. 14-year-old and a 17-year-old. We had no heat. The water was froze. We had no food. I had that .22 rifle right there, and I had 2 bullets. And I'm thinking, there's 2 of us. And I got 2 bullets. What do you do? It was just a fleeting thought. And it was almost dark because it's wintertime and it gets dark at 4:30. So I left my brother, and he's sitting right over there, and this is hard for me to say. I left him there, and I said, I'll be back. And I went out the back door, and I went up on the hill, and I told you we live close to New York State, and I got right on the New York State line. I'm in Pennsylvania. There's a hedgerow with them old stumps and stuff, and I look into New York State and these pine trees, because I was pretty good. I could sneak up on a lot, and I look, and there's a deer way up there. And I pulled up with that single shot, and I shot, and I seen a limb flip over. I missed it. I missed my chance. I had one more bullet. And it's a single shot. You got to open it up. And to this day, it had to have been God. I have no idea what happened. That deer turned around, and it ran right toward me. And it ran, and it ran, and it ran, and it ran. And it got from here to my new buddy Austin, that close. And I'm down behind this stump. And that deer's peeking through the stump at me, and I put that shell right there, and I pulled the trigger, and that thing dropped, and it never even... I've shot him in the head with a 30-06 and had him flailing around like a chicken with its head cut off. But I shot that little deer right between the eyes with that 22, and it never even wiggled. And I took it because it's illegal. Probably statute of limitations is gone by now, I would suspect. But that's 40 years ago. But anyways, that deer dropped right there, and I took a knife, and I skinned that thing out, and I had an old burlap bag. Some of you kids, we used to call them feed bags. Now you have to call them burlap bags because feed bags now are plastic. But I took and I deboned that deer right there, and I threw all the stuff in it, and I took brush, and I didn't have TV. We couldn't get away with crimes. This is all from my imagination. I covered it up with pine trees, and I walked backwards in the snow to get to the stream, and I got down the stream, and I run about a mile down through there, and I figured ain't no game warden going to chase me down through here. So I finally cut up over the hill, and it was late when I got back. And my brother sat there. He had a little candle. He sat there at the table. It's all we had is table and one bed. I'm telling you what, and 2 kids, a 14 and 17-year-old, you share a bed when you have no heat. And I took that deer, and I hung it in the back room. Remember the back room? Because it wasn't heated. And that deer got us through to almost springtime. Almost springtime. And then somebody, I think it might have been my mother, I'm not sure, or my grandmother, all of a sudden I started getting $70 a month in food stamps. Dude, can you imagine? $70 a month? That was awesome. And we'd always, once a month, we'd buy a half-gallon ice cream. That's back when it was a half-gallon, and now it's not. But I'd take a knife and I'd cut that in half, and my brother would eat half of it, and I'd eat half of it. And we kept in school, and I stayed in school, and I graduated on an honor roll. And I had absolutely nothing at home. And somehow I graduated, and I got a job, and here I am today. Remember I told you years ago when Mrs. Aunt Doris Corwin led me to the Lord? I got saved that day. I had Christ in me. I didn't know what it meant. No one really took time with me to teach me Bible and all that stuff. I was just, a little kid. I'm convinced that God allowed me to get saved when I was little. Because remember when I told you I come home when I was a 17-year-old junior in high school and I had nothing, I was alone? I really was not alone. Christ was inside of me. I couldn't fathom that back then, but now I realize. Some of you, I'm sure some of you got way worse situations than I was in. I'm going to flip this last slide right there. And I'm going to ask you some questions. I want you to be honest with you. Be honest with yourself. It's hard to do that. Romans 3:23 says, all sin and come short of the glory of God. We're sinners. We are. We do stupid stuff. What sin is falling short of God's perfect will for your life. The next verse there says, Romans 6:23. This is known as the Romans road. For the wages of sin is death. If you die and you do not have Jesus in your heart, and they don't preach as much anymore, you're going to hell. So we try to butter it up now, and let's just face it, you're not going to heaven. But it says right there, it says, but the gift of God is eternal life through Jesus Christ our Lord. Then it says down there in Romans 10:9, it says, if you confess with your mouth that Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved. That gives you home in heaven, people. Now, I'm not going to ask you to, if you're living with someone you're not married with, I'm not going to ask you to leave them, obviously. I don't care if you smoke. I don't care if you drink. I don't care what you do. But I'm telling you what, guys, there is no guarantee of tomorrow. I'm going to tell just one quick story. I know everybody's getting a little antsy because I got a piece of pie over there I didn't eat on purpose for I'd shut my mouth and get over there and eat it. But one quick story. No, I'll let it go at that. I'll let it go at that. I better do that. What I want to ask you, be honest with yourselves. If you were to die today, where are you going? That's sobering. I'm not asking you to be religious. Religious bites. Religion is terrible. Religion is what's bombing these buildings and these wars. That's religion. But what I'm asking you, do you have a relationship with Jesus Christ? You can be big and tough. You can be whatever you think you might be. I don't need Jesus. Ultimately, you need Jesus. I'm going to say a prayer. It's called the salvation prayer. And I'm just going to pray. It's going to be simple. I'm not going to use, I'm not a preacher. Well, I'm a preacher, but I'm not like a regular preacher where he has to impress people. But I'm going to pray a prayer. And I'm going to go through this. And if you want to repeat that prayer after me, inside, you can do it out loud, but inside. Let's pray. Lord, I know I'm a sinner. I know I've done things that are not your will. I know I've done things that the world looks at as good, that you look at as bad. Lord Jesus, I know you died on a cross for my sins. I know you paid the penalty for my sins. Lord, come into my life and save me. Forgive me from my sins. Prepare a home in heaven for me. In Jesus' name, amen. I'm telling you guys, if you said that prayer, I'm not going to ask you to raise your hand up, but we do have a card. Pastor will explain what's going on with that card. There's different numbers. You put different checks in. But if you want to talk to me, you can come up and talk to me. If you need somebody, find somebody with tag on it. They can help you. There's a lot of people here who will help you. But I'm telling you guys, you're not guaranteed tomorrow. You're only guaranteed right now. So, thank you guys. Thanks for everything.